Hello, fitness business nerds. What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Business for Unicorns podcast. Today, you got me and Pete in your ears. Welcome, Pete.
Thank you for having me, Michael.
We're doing another episode today that I think is going to be coming out during our Unicorn Society enrollment period. So if you're listening to this before, I think November 20th, and Unicorn Society is still open for enrollment, come check us out. If you want to work with us more closely as coaches, we'd love to have you. You might have missed the early bird window, but there's still, great work to be done together. So go to businessunicorns.com and learn more about how you can work with us on a regular basis. Today, we're jumping into a question that was submitted from a listener. It was actually Eric Waggle. Sorry, Eric, I pronounce your name both ways. I'm just going to say both in case one of them's wrong. And Eric is one of the co-founders over at Kinetic Performance Institute, or KPI, who actually is a Unicorn Society member. And he asked a great question that was kind of directed in Pete's area. That's really about sports performance facilities. I think listeners who are not sports performance facilities will get something out of this topic, but the topic is really a philosophy around what kind of stories are best told in your marketing. And Eric asked the really great question that was, in marketing for sports performance facilities, is it better to tell stories about kind of your elite pro or semi-pro athletes in your marketing? Or is it better to tell stories about kind of everyday athletes who are having successes and wins? Which kind of stories are more valuable to tell? And he phrased it as like a versus question, like, is one better than the other? And I'll insert my take on this, which is I'm also curious to know what the value of both is. So rather than an either or question, I'm going to maybe rephrase this. Sorry, Eric. I'm going to rephrase this as like, what's the value of both, Pete? When thinking about sports performance facilities, what's the value of sharing success stories of some of your kind of elite athletes? And what's the value of sharing success stories from some of your more kind of everyday, maybe youth athletes?
I love how you said you're going to say his name both ways in case one of them is wrong. No. They were both right.
One of them was wrong.
And I'm not going to say how I say Eric's last name because I agree. I don't know that I ever confirmed it. So I'm definitely right if I don't say it. This is a good question, and one that's changing a lot over time. Believe it or not, I had a conversation about this in the weight room inside of the last 6 hours with a client of ours who has major league service time. So he's pitched at the highest level possible. He's not currently doing so, but he's trying to get back there. Mm-hmm. And we got onto the topic about basically over the duration or lifespan of our business, the way that performance training gym facilities like ours speak of their relationship with high profile athletes is kind of always changing. And early on, we used to announce the arrival of every professional athlete with a tweet. It would say, today, CSP welcomes at Michael Keeler, aka your handle, pitcher from the Seattle Mariners organization, hashtag CSP family. And then we might put up a picture of them signing the pro athlete wall or something like that. And it was just this like not at all subtle declaration of social proof that we were just hammering all the time. And at the time, that wasn't considered showing off or being arrogant. It was like we were really proud of the fact that these guys picked us. We want you guys to know they picked us. But that isn't necessarily a mainstream approach anymore. And I think you do get to a point where, like if our Florida facility was doing that, they'd be like today, and then they'd just do a list of like 6 new guys who started that day, sort of a deal, and it just gets the shock value of it wore off. And it's not as effective as it used to be. But what it spun into, which I'm not that psyched about for the performance training space as a whole, is that people started claiming ownership of athletes that they really hadn't worked with much, or had only, athletes who were not readily, publicly claiming affiliation with their operation. So you might have someone in for a short-term consult, not see them for 4 years, and then they get drafted and say, look who got drafted, CSP family. And so we've tried to step away from that a little bit, because when you really look at the nature of the upbringing of these elite athletes, some of them have been in 6 different elite training facilities over the last 10 years, all of which are raising their hand and saying, that guy's a product of us. And I hate that. I'm tired of that. And unless the athlete is willing to declare that they are a product of one specific place, we're very careful about how we talk about our alignment with them. And so internally here at CSP Massachusetts, we kind of have an unofficial rule that you don't put a professional athlete on our social media for at least the first 2 to 3 weeks they're working with us. And when you do it, you do it with their blessing. And so they don't feel like in, week 1, day 3, we're saying, hey, what's your username? I need to make sure the world knows you're here right now. And so we don't even broach the topic of conversation. We don't touch it until we're almost at the end of month 1. I'd say once we know that they're re-upping for month 2, it might be a conversation we have. Now, there are exceptions to that rule. If an athlete says like, hey, when are you going to put me on the gram? Then sure, we'll put them on Instagram. That's like, there are no timetables when an athlete tells us they want to be publicly aligned with us.
Sure.
But most of the better ones who come through now have a bad taste in their mouth from someone already having exploited their relationship with them on the internet. And I don't want to be, example number 2, 3, 4, or 5 on their resume of gyms that they've been with that they feel like are kind of selfishly taking advantage of their decision to come to their weight room. So that's kind of like a big picture opinion on the topic. This being said, once they get into our training environment, they become part of the fabric of the community. They really engage with the people and the process, and they socialize with everybody. It seems that they are ready and willing to play the game and be part of that. And so at that point, they're usually very welcoming of any requests, and they're happy to share if we approached it in a way that they felt was authentic and not super opportunistic. And you can definitely do it. But we're all kidding ourselves if we act like these like super high profile professional athletes are filling our gym and paying our bills. Our facility in Florida, yes, but that is a unicorn. Like that, it is extraordinarily rare to find a facility where 60 to 70% of their revenue comes from people who play their sport professionally. That's just not normal. I think they've done a wonderful job building that down there, and I'm really proud of where it's at, but it doesn't come across as relatable to most gym owners. So what I'll tell you about marketing your alignment with professional athletes is that their presence in your gym is definitely a great tool for social proof and a great indicator of your competency. And if you can figure out a way to gently nudge them into the message and tell that story, then you can and you should. But you can't only do that, because the regulars are going to start to get frustrated and feel like they are not being seen or appreciated. And the regulars are the ones who are paying your bills for the bulk of the year, if not all of it. And they need to be celebrated more frequently than the high profile ones who come in and pay for 2 to 4, sometimes 5 months of training. And that is our kind of mentality across the board. You go onto our social media, you're going to see everyday Joes. You're going to see high schoolers who dream of being college athletes and college athletes who dream of being professional athletes. And like I said, former major league athletes who dream of getting back there. But they're all part of the social media strategy. And that is my really long answer to your question. How do you think about this, Pete? And I could keep going. I have a lot of thoughts, but I'll pull up and let you poke at it.
That's great. No, that's great. I think, what I'm hearing you say, if I had to repeat back, the takeaway that I'm having from that is that, and I'll add my own spin here, which is, the whole point of marketing is to have our avatars see themselves in the stuff we put out, right? To have the people we want to attract see our marketing, see our content, and see themselves in it. And so to your point here, if your marketing is just promoting and showing athletes, professional athletes, pro athletes, then the rest of your avatars don't see themselves in that marketing. If you're only showing everyday youth athletes or Gen Pop people, then the pro athletes are not seeing themselves. So I'm hearing you say that having some like a diversified portfolio of marketing content helps different avatars that you're trying to attract see themselves in your marketing. Is that a fair summary?
Absolutely true. I put up I'd say the most engagement Instagram story I've ever had. I put up a post the other day about a frustrating F45 ad that came across my Instagram feed. And it was a woman in a sports bra and some tight short shorts with like shredded abs.
I saw this,
and like knee socks above her knee. and a guy with his sleeves cut off on his shirt and huge biceps flexing for the camera, and it says you're running out of time to get the lowest price best exercise in town at F45 location name I'll omit. And I put it up and I basically said, does anybody find this relatable? Because every time I talk to Gen Pop potential clients, the most common feedback I get is, I'm afraid of the gym. And
Yeah.
I've owned a gym for 15 and a half years, and I found that marketing strategy intimidating.
Yeah.
It makes me not want to go into F45.
Even if those models were over 45, they were the most shredded over 45-year-olds I had ever seen.
Exactly.
How is this relatable content? And and that hashtag relatable content meme is because there's so much content out there that is so exclusionary, right? That's not relatable to everyday people. And there's actually a lot of accounts out there, Instagram, TikTok, etc., that are just making fun of the content that gets put out there that's not relatable. And so you don't want to be
I was going to say, I got a DM from Mike Boyle on that post, basically saying like, hey, you should stop complaining about this because we're very fortunate that this is who we're competing with. He's like, this should continue until the end of time as far as you and I are concerned, because our job's only getting easier. The more there is out there for us to contend with, the easier it is for us to grab the low-hanging fruit.
That is sad. That is sad, but true. It's nothing like Mike Boyle just to cut to the chase for us. I know he listens to the podcast, right, Mike. So thanks for keeping it real, Mike. Maybe I'll say this for our Gen Pop folks listening who are not sports performance. This same thinking matters to us. Right? This same thinking of, does the content I put out actually represent content that attracts my avatar? And here's the thing is, if you go back, dear listeners, to past podcasts I did with Chris Burgess. Chris Burgess is the founder of Lift the Bar over in the UK, which is like a education resource company for trainers. He did a great podcast. It was a while back. I'm not sure what episode it was, that talked about consumer psychology and talked about the fact that there's a lot of research that says that there are some avatars out there, some people who are attracted to aspirational images. Some people who want to see images of people more fit than them, more confident, more sexy, more. And for some people, that actually does motivate them. When they see someone with, let's just say, big arms and they don't have big arms, they actually find that motivating. They want to click and look like that person. There's also other, avatars, the research shows, that are completely deflated by that. And they want to see people who look like them. And they want to see people who look like them now, right? Who are people who are maybe more deconditioned, people who do not look like they've ever ran a marathon, right? And that's comforting. Right. And so I think, there's not one right or wrong answer, because there are some avatars that really are attracted to aspirational images and aspirational language. So I think the thing I would say, dear listeners, is you got to know who your avatar is. You got to know if the clients you're trying to attract are people who are really inspired by seeing those ripped fitness models in your images, or the people who really want to see people who look and move like them in your content. And I'd say if you're serving a general population, it's more likely the second. It's more likely people want to feel comforted by the fact there's people their age, their size, their gender expression, their abilities. It's more common that that's going to be comforting to get them to click than the reverse. But I wouldn't throw the reverse out. There's some people out there some avatars that will be attracted to stuff that is aspirational. So I don't know if that helps at all, but I think that distinction is useful for all gyms.
Yes, and Chris is a worthy follow. He's awesome.
Yeah, go follow Chris Burgess and Lift the Bar and everything they do. He's such a nerd about consumer psychology, and I say it in the best possible way. And there's a lot to be learned from, what marketers already know about what images work and what copy works and doesn't work. And so I think, while I encourage you all to do your own research and learn who your avatar is, there's also a lot of great research and studies already that can point you in the right direction. Yeah.
Can I share one more thought,
please,
that relates to the performance training gym owners? As time goes on, I'm realizing again and again that we're not all great evaluators of talent and seeing the future. And if you fail to make all of your clients feel seen and valued and kind of on a level playing field, you miss the opportunity to align yourself with them in a authentic and approved manner when they do make it. And so we've had just so many circumstances over the years now where guys got there, and I put that in quotations by there, the league, or they get drafted, or something big happens. And when I look back on where they were when they started, and I'm like, I had no idea. I mean, I really didn't. We've got a kid who just, or I shouldn't say kid, a grown man who came and started with us a couple years ago, and someone said, "Oh, yes, he plays professionally. The Houston Astros drafted him," and I'm like, "Yeah, well, he played at the University of Maine. I mean, how many guys from Maine make it?" Well, that guy just won American League Championship Series MVP as a rookie, and he is on the fast track to being a superstar in MLB. And when he started here, in my mind, I was like, oh, it's really cool he got drafted, but he went to the University of Maine. That guy's not going to go to the major leagues. But if I acted that way with him, to him, or if my coaches treated him like he was less than because there was a guy from Stanford or Florida State or God knows where in the gym at the same time, and we just don't prioritize him because he's not as projectable. When the time came, this offseason, he's told us, yeah, I'm coming back. I want to be in the Northeast. I get it that people want to go to warm weather, but I want to be around my family, and I'm going to be back in the weight room. I will see you guys when the season ends. If we just came out of nowhere and we were like, look at your success, will you please come back to our gym? We can get you on social media. It would be a different story. But instead, he was part of the community. He was treated just as importantly and respected the same way everyone else was. So try not to fall into the trap of falling in love with the most projectable athletes, the ones who are like, oh, that one's definitely getting a scholarship. That one's definitely, has an advisor. They've got agencies that are trying to work with them. Those ones are fine, and sometimes they make it. But when I look at the ones who have made it in the last, say, 5+ years of our operation, they were all fringe guys who, if we didn't take them seriously, they'd pick a different gym once they did make it. But thankfully, everybody's on a level playing field when they're in the weight room. And I put up a post a couple weeks ago on social media that said one of my hardcore rules for creating good gym culture is not delineating between the good athletes and everybody else. They all train at the same time. There is no elevating groups above others for a number of reasons, but that's one of them, because you just never know who's got it in them. And we're going off of like someone else's kind of predictions on what their career looks like. So that's definitely specific to the performance training gyms, but all of us train guys who are going to have a chance to maybe play at a fringe Division I program, and we don't realize, oh, they got it. They just need a couple more years to bloom than the ones who are high profile in high school.
Yeah, I think it's a great reminder to all of us that we just, you never know where success stories are going to come from in your clients, because success looks like a lot of different things, different people, especially out of the sports context with general population folks. Lots of people, success for them can mean like, oh, I can tie my shoes comfortably, right? I actually can get 8 hours of sleep now. I can wash my own hair now because I can lift my arms up over my head, right? The success comes in so many forms. So that, I think the thing I'm really taking away from what you're sharing, Pete, is, obviously treating everyone equally, right? Treating everyone with the same amount of kind of respect that you would any other client in your gym. And then that pays off in the long run, because you never know who is going to be highly successful and have a story that you want to share, that you want to, and because you helped in that story, you're obviously going to benefit from it as a business. So I think it's a great lesson that you just never know where the success stories are going to come from.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's leave it at that, my friend. I think this was a great one, Eric. I hope we answered your question and probably gave you more than you bargained for. But friends, thanks for listening. If you have a suggestion for what we should talk about next on this podcast, email us, Michael@businessofunicorns.com, Pete@businessofunicorns.com, and leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We can find more awesome humans like you to listen. Thanks much, Pete. I'll talk to you on the next one.
Thank you for allowing me to share, as always.